I try and kind of ride this line between leaving open space, so like being interested in like the history of minimal painting, and I'm interested in like leaving as much open as I can in the work because I think it allows things to breathe, which can be really nice. But at the same time, I'm interested in these kind of whimsical, almost narrative lines that can go through the painting. And I don't shy away from using those. And I want there to be kind of like a feeling when you look at the work that you're being guided through it in the same way that like you would have like a cadence to a poem or a rhythm. So I try and create that with my compositions. Because I grew up on a like large family property where I was homeschooled and really like playing outside for most of my childhood, I think a lot of that imaginative play where I was building structures and forts, that stuff has seeped into my way of building now, where there's an imaginative space that I go into or that like is hinted at, whether it's the shapes of the canvas, almost structural and playful. When I started doing shaped canvases, I was really interested in these kind of architectural forms. And then a few people suggested to me, they were like, you know, these almost look like quilts, the way that you're making these. And that really resonated with me because I grew up around a lot of quilting. So it felt like a nice way for me to begin to start looking at quilting shapes and like specifically quilting blocks. I do a lot of preparatory work, so I will do, I start with drawings on paper. I used to do like a lot of drawings with colored pencils, and I sometimes do that, but most of the time now I just draw with this pencil on paper and kind of work out compositions. And I always work on a square drawing, and then after I have like maybe have like 5 to 10 drawings that I'm interested in for pairing with the canvas I've made, then I will like float them in a digital program over the shaped painting and kind of like play around and move shapes around in Illustrator and find what feels good. And then I try out colors and such, and then I sort of go like back and forth between the paper and the canvas, and then I begin working on the surface with like all these different sketches as reference. But the actual painting, like after I get one layer down from a sketch, the actual painting doesn't really look at the sketch anymore. I do think it's important to use like the tools of your time to like if you have these tools, use them, but at the same time, I'm not like a computer whiz. And so I try to like really keep it as a tool I use to start, and then like the rest is just my eyes and my hands like responding to the material. The composition will always read different in person because it has a different scale to it, and the way that like natural light hits paint on a surface is going to tell you something if you're listening to what it needs that I would never be able to figure out on a computer screen or on just like pencil on paper. So it's important that the sketching happens to get me started, but that I leave it behind and really like engage with the painting side of my brain. I approach color in my work in an intuitive way and in a very intentional way. I have a very strong desire to put as many colors in a painting as I can, but I know that is often like it's kind of muddy and you lose colors. And so because I love color so much and I want to have everything harmonized and really like speak to the viewer, I often will use more earthy tones in combination with a brighter color. There's a lengthy process to making my work because it involves sculptural aspects and dyeing aspects, like working with fiber, and then also painting aspects. I did my undergrad degree in painting and installation and my master's in sculpture, so I have a lot of different tools and hats that I wear in the studio. From the start, I designed these like shaped canvases on paper and on my computer, and then I figure out how I'm going to make them. The most recent series have been very like pointed shapes, and so they're a bit tricky to fabricate in the wood shop. So I do some like small test pieces before I actually assemble the stretchers. And then after I've assembled the stretchers, I dye raw canvas and I wash it and dry it and iron it, and then I stretch it over the shaped stretchers that I make. And then after that, and after they're all sealed and ready to be painted on, I do a lot of preparatory like sketches on paper and try out different colors and just kind of respond to the forms. And then I begin painting, and the painting is kind of a push and pull, like I'm sort of feeling out the form, and I work abstractly, so they're almost like, I say they're kind of like poems because they have like a real consideration of the space in between the shape, the way that all the different forms on the surface are like talking to each other. So there's a good bit of play within the actual act of painting too. It's not just like a completion of a sketch. My work has evolved over the years in a few ways. Because I studied painting and then sculpture, when I decided to do a master's in sculpture, I was really interested in like figuring out how to expand the tools I had and also like work in 3D. I was specifically interested in like what a three-dimensional painting would look like, and so I was building these really cool environments in grad school that you could go inside. And they weren't very practical for like a career outside of an academic setting, but they were really playful and exploratory. And between like doing that and studying traditional sculpture, I started to see the actual canvas that artists paint on as like a really fertile place to work. So I was like looking at like the actual bones of painting. So like if we paint on a stretcher, like what's behind there, and how do we, like, am I happy with the rectangle? And if not, like, why not play with that a bit and push it? Over the last few years, I've been slowly like diving deeper into that and like finding inspiration in other artists who have worked with shaped painting and found ways to explore the possibilities of canvases.